We've been very clear that there should not be a war in the Ukraine or a war that, or let me reframe it. What we've been very clear about is the issue that there's been a playing out of a proxy war, because this is not just about Russia and the Ukraine. This is about NATO. This is about interests of various major players. And we've always had a commitment that says we need to ensure that there's peace. And the patron has been very clear on conflict resolution and on peace on the African continent and elsewhere. We've also been very clear around unipolarity. We can't have a single narrative at any particular point in time. And I think, unfortunately, we've seen that playing itself out. So our commitment, as part of a non-aligned commitment, is that we won't get directly involved in this particular conflict. However, we're also committed to those who say there's a need to find a speedy solution. And that solution should not be seen as leaning towards the interest of any particular bloc. We've seen what does one call it, the instrumentalization or the weaponization of the financial system. We've seen the weaponization through sanctions placed on Russia, where fertilizer, for example, cannot reach African countries. And it's quite critical that we look at the interests of the continent at this point in time. The question of food security, the ability to access for agricultural purposes, to access fertilizer. And hence the foundation is involved in an initiative together with the Edinburgh University, where we've pulled together a number of players to look at how best we can overcome this issue of sanctions on Russian fertilizers. Now, you get people say, well, there's not sanctions. However, there's an inability for movement of fertilizer because the individual European countries have exercised their own sanctions. So we're saying, let's deal with this in a way where you think of humanity as a whole and you don't think of your own particular geopolitical interest around this. And I think our commitment is Africa should have a position. Very clearly, there is a recognition of the importance of the continent in all this, and we believe that Africa together should look at a solution where we're actually saying, we've got experience as well. Let's look at making ourselves available to help resolve this conflict.
And now you have this major problem, the conflict in Sudan.
Sudanese have reached out to the patron in particular around this conflict, and they have indicated major concerns around what seems to be taking the form of almost a civil war, if we can call it that. And hence he strongly called out for the rebel group, if I can refer to them as such, to actually step down and for all parties to find a peaceful resolution. I mean, what we're seeing there is quite devastating, and it's rolling back the gains that have been there. And I think here Sudanese need to come together and really resolve this matter. This is the moment where the African Union must come to the fore, because we can't be failing a member state in this particular manner. This problem should not be solved by anyone externally. This is a problem that the union must deal with, and there's sufficient eminent leaders and former leaders who can play a proactive role to deal with it.
Finally, on the lecture, looking forward to the lecture this year?
Yes, this year we're having Professor Sibo Grovigia. We are for the first time having this lecture outside of South Africa. So we're going to Guinea-Conakry, and we will come together, look at various challenges around institutions, touch on governance, but also in the build-up to the lecture, there will be meetings both with government, civil society and academia.